A wealthy CEO finds his divorced wife at the bank with a child who looks exactly like him. The woman who had vanished from his life 3 years ago without a trace. But she wasn't alone. "Sir. Are you all right?" his assistant questioned as Blake froze mid-stride. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story." The Manhattan skyline glittered like a crown of achievements behind Blake Prescott as he strode across his company's marble lobby. At 24, he commanded attention without effort, power and confidence radiating from his tailored Italian suit. The acquisition papers in his hand represented another victory, another billion added to his tech empire. "Mr. Prescott, the board is waiting in the penthouse conference room," his assistant's voice floated through his earpiece. That's when time fractured. Across the polished expanse of the lobby stood a ghost. Skylar. The woman who had vanished from his life 3 years ago without a trace. But she wasn't alone. Clutching her hand was a small boy, no more than 2 years old, with eyes so startlingly blue they seemed to pierce through the crowded space. Blake's eyes. "Sir. Are you all right?" his assistant questioned as Blake froze mid-stride. "That woman," Blake began, but Skylar had already noticed him. Her face paled as she knelt beside the child, whispering something urgent. Then she straightened and began moving toward Blake with determined steps. "Security," Blake managed to say, his world tilting on its axis. The woman approaching, intercept but gently. 2 guards materialized instantly, blocking Skylar's path just 15 feet from Blake. The child began to cry as voices elevated. "Please, he needs to know." Skylar's voice carried across the lobby. "Blake. They're taking him away forever. You have to stop them." The security team escorted her toward the exit, professional but firm. The child twisted in Skylar's arms, dropping something that fluttered to the floor, a crumpled piece of paper. Blake moved before he could think, snatching up the document as they disappeared through the revolving doors. His eyes scanned the wrinkled page, blood turning to ice. His own signature, perfectly forged, on adoption papers he'd never seen. His former CFO Marcus Wells is listed as legal guardian. And circled in angry red ink, "DNA test destroyed." A handwritten note at the bottom made his heart stop, 72 hours until witness protection. Then we disappear forever. Blake's phone rang, the board was still waiting. But the billion-dollar deal suddenly meant nothing. He had 3 days to find his son before they both vanished forever. 3 years earlier, Blake's life had been different. His company was rising meteorically, but he still attended investor meetings personally, still coded late into the night. That's how he met Skylar Chen. Brilliant programmer, unapologetically honest, with a laugh that made the fluorescent startup office feel warm. "Your security protocol has 3 critical vulnerabilities," she'd announced in their first meeting, sliding a notebook across his desk without introducing herself. "I can fix them by tomorrow." Their relationship burned hot and fast, late nights debugging turned to dawn walks through empty Manhattan streets. Skylar challenged everything about him, from his business model to his heart. "You trust the wrong people," she told him once, moonlight catching in her dark hair as they stood on his balcony. "You see the best in your team. It's admirable and dangerous." Then came the morning Blake woke to emptiness. No note. No explanation. Every call went to voicemail until her number was disconnected. She'd vanished so completely that even his considerable resources couldn't locate her. The abandonment hardened something in Blake. He channeled everything into his company, becoming the youngest tech billionaire in Manhattan. The press called him calculating, ruthless, brilliant. No one saw the hollow space behind his success. Now, staring at the adoption papers in his trembling hands, Blake understood. Sometime after she disappeared, Skylar had given birth to his child. A son he never knew existed. The board meeting notifications continued buzzing. His tech empire needed him, the acquisition would secure government contracts worth billions. But a different clock was ticking now. Blake pressed his private elevator button, mind racing. Marcus Wells, his former CFO who'd resigned abruptly 18 months ago citing family obligations. The man Blake had trusted with everything. What game was he playing with Blake's company, with Blake's son? Cancel my meetings for the next 3 days, Blake instructed his assistant as the elevator climbed. Family emergency. But sir, the Pentagon contracts. We'll wait, Blake said, steel entering his voice. And find me everything we have on Marcus Wells since his departure. Private files, archived emails, security footage. Everything. The image of those little blue eyes, his eyes, wouldn't fade from Blake's mind. 72 hours to uncover a conspiracy that had been brewing for years. 72 hours to find the woman who broke his heart and the son he never knew he had. Blake's penthouse transformed into a war room by midnight. 3 screens displayed data streams while his most trusted security specialist, Jessica Ruiz, typed furiously at a keyboard. Skylar Chin effectively doesn't exist anymore, Jessica said, frustration evident. Her digital footprint vanished completely 36 months ago. No credit cards, no social media, no travel records. It's not amateur work, this is professional-grade identity scrubbing. Blake paced behind her, the coffee mug clutched so tightly his knuckles whitened. Nobody disappears completely. There's always a trace. Unless government programs are involved, Jessica countered. Witness protection leaves these exact patterns. Blake froze. Check Marcus Wells. Financial records, communications, travel, anything connecting him to federal agencies. The screens flickered as Jessica dug deeper. Data points materialized, forming connections that made Blake's blood boil. Marcus made 11 cash withdrawals totaling $370,000 in the month before Skylar disappeared, Jessica reported. Then, 2 weeks after she vanished, he opened an encrypted communication channel with someone using federal-level security protocols. Can you crack it? Jessica's expression hardened. Already did. The messages are coded, but one contained GPS coordinates. She pulled up a map showing a location in Brooklyn. This property was purchased through a shell corporation with ties to Marcus 3 years ago. Utility bills show consistent usage patterns suggesting occupation. That's where they're keeping my son, Blake said, certainty crystallizing. There's more, Jessica continued, pulling up security camera footage. Marcus visited your corporate legal department repeatedly in after-hours meetings before he resigned. The timing aligns with the dates on those forged adoption papers. Blake studied the grainy images of his former friend and mentor sneaking around his own company. The betrayal cut deep, Marcus had been like family. What about the witness protection claim? Is there any evidence supporting that? Jessica hesitated. I found a scheduled transport request in a Homeland Security database, heavily encrypted, but the timing matches your 72-hour window. No names attached, but the clearance level is unusually high. Blake checked his watch. 65 hours remained. I need a secure vehicle, no GPS. And Jessica, tell no one about this. Not even our team. What are you planning? Jessica asked, concern evident. Blake grabbed his jacket, slipping the forged adoption papers into an inner pocket. I'm going to Brooklyn to get some answers. What Blake couldn't see was Jessica's expression as he headed for the elevator, or the text message she sent the moment the doors closed behind him. The Brooklyn address led Blake to a nondescript apartment building nestled between a laundromat and a bodega. Motion sensors tracked his approach, and cameras pivoted to follow his movement, security far beyond what belonged in such an ordinary location. He parked 3 blocks away, pulled a baseball cap low over his eyes, and approached on foot. Tech billionaires weren't exactly anonymous in New York, and the last thing he needed was recognition. The lock on the front entrance was high-end, electronic with backup mechanical systems. Blake pulled out a specialized device of his own design, one that would never see commercial markets. 30 seconds later, he was inside. Apartment 3B. Blake stood before the door, heart hammering against his ribs. 3 years of questions. A lifetime of consequences waiting on the other side. He knocked. Silence stretched. Then shuffling, a chain sliding. The door opened a crack, revealing Skylar's face, thinner than he remembered, dark circles beneath her eyes. Recognition. Shock. Fear. "How did you?" she began, but Blake pushed forward, forcing the door wider. "Where is he?" Blake demanded, stepping into the apartment. "Blake, you can't be here." Panic edged Skylar's voice. "They're watching. They'll know. Where is my son?" Each word precise, controlled, despite the hurricane raging inside him. Movement from a hallway drew his attention. The little boy from the lobby appeared, clutching a worn stuffed elephant. Those unmistakable blue eyes widened at the sight of Blake. "Ethan," Skylar said softly, "go back to your room, sweetie." "Ethan," Blake repeated, the name of his son passing his lips for the first time. The boy didn't move, studying Blake with an intensity that seemed impossible for a child so young. The resemblance was uncanny, not just the eyes, but the set of his jaw, the analytical tilt of his head. "You signed him away," Skylar hissed, positioning herself between Blake and the child. "You gave Marcus legal rights when I wouldn't cooperate with your schemes." "I never signed anything," Blake countered, pulling out the crumpled adoption papers. "This signature is forged. I didn't even know he existed until yesterday." Confusion flickered across Skylar's face. "That's impossible. Marcus showed me the paperwork. Said you wanted nothing to do with us, that you considered us a liability to your government contracts." "Government contracts?" Blake's mind raced. "What are you talking about?" "Your military AI program," Skylar whispered. "The one with the backdoor access. I found the code, Blake. That's why I ran." Blake's blood turned cold. "We don't have a military AI program." Understanding dawned in Skylar's eyes, the first cracks in a foundation of lies. "Then why has Marcus been selling access to one for 3 years under your company's name?" The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. Marcus hadn't just betrayed Blake personally, he'd created an illegal military program using Blake's company as cover. A phone buzzed. Skylar grabbed it, her face draining of color as she read the message. "They've moved up the extraction," she said, voice trembling. "They know you're here." "Pack essentials only," Blake commanded, pulling window blinds closed. "We have minutes, not hours." Skylar hesitated, maternal instinct warring with logic. "How do I know this isn't another manipulation? Another trap?" "Because Marcus wouldn't have gone through elaborate schemes to keep me from my son if he wanted me involved," Blake answered, checking the apartment's security system. "And he wouldn't be rushing your extraction now if he wasn't terrified of what we might discover together." Ethan watched the adults with solemn eyes, clutching his elephant tighter. "Where would we go?" Skylar asked, already moving toward a pre-packed emergency bag. "Marcus has government connections. Your resources are compromised." "Not all of them," Blake replied. "I developed contingencies after the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Secure properties, untraceable funds, communication networks outside normal channels." A helicopter thundered overhead, circling the block. Blake's phone pinged with an alert from his security system, 3 unmarked vehicles approaching the building. "Trust me one more time," Blake pleaded, extending his hand. "For him." Skylar's gaze shifted to Ethan, then back to Blake. Decision made, she grabbed the emergency bag and scooped up their son. "There's a service exit through the basement," she said. "It connects to the laundromat next door." They moved swiftly through the building, Ethan quiet against his mother's shoulder. As they reached the basement, Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, "Marcus knows. Apartment compromised. Team en route. They're ahead of us, Blake muttered, showing Skylar the message. You trusted the wrong person again, she said, but without malice. Blake accessed the building's electrical panel, overriding the security system. Backup generator activates in 30 seconds. When the lights switch, we run. The momentary darkness would mask their heat signatures from thermal cameras. A simple trick, but effective. Before we go, Skylar said, her voice low, you should know, Ethan recognized you instantly from photos I've shown him. He knows who you are. Blake's eyes met his son's in the dim emergency lighting. The child extended a small hand toward him, offering a profound trust Blake hadn't earned. The lights flickered, then died. Now! Blake commanded, taking Skylar's hand as they pushed through the service door into organized chaos. Behind them, boots pounded on stairs. Ahead, an uncertain future. Between them, a child who connected their worlds, and secrets that could destroy everything Blake had built. They had less than 48 hours to uncover the truth, clear their names, and reclaim their lives before Marcus's conspiracy swallowed them whole. The service elevator in Blake's corporate headquarters required biometric confirmation, a safety measure that now felt like a blessing. With the building nearly empty at 2 a.m., Blake slipped through the executive floor like a shadow, Skylar following close behind. They'd left Ethan with Blake's most trusted driver, an ex-military man whose loyalty had been tested repeatedly. Security cameras? Skylar whispered, eyes tracking the ceiling corners. Loop program activated from my phone. We have 18 minutes before the system resets, Blake replied, leading her toward the executive suite. Marcus's old office is through here. The office remained untouched since Marcus's departure. Company policy preserved workspaces during transition periods. Blake headed straight for the hidden wall safe, concealed behind an abstract painting. You know his combination? Skylar asked, keeping watch at the door. No need. Blake pulled a specialized device from his jacket. This will cycle through possibilities faster than any commercial codebreaker. As the device worked, Blake accessed Marcus's computer terminal. The system logs show Marcus accessing classified projects at unusual hours, including nights when I was traveling. There, Skylar pointed to a folder labeled Prometheus Initiative. Blake's eyes narrowed. We've never had a project with that name. The documents revealed a sophisticated military AI system. One designed to penetrate foreign defense networks while appearing to originate from friendly sources. A false flag operation that violated international law and could trigger armed conflict if discovered. This isn't just corporate espionage, Blake muttered. It's treason. The safe finally clicked open, revealing a flash drive and stack of documents. Blake grabbed both as Skylar downloaded files from the terminal. Blake, Skylar's voice turned urgent. These financial records show payments to 3 board members. Your CFO, legal counsel, and, she paused, your current head of security. James. Blake's stomach dropped. His security chief was his oldest friend, predating even the company. A noise from the hallway froze them both. Footsteps approached, the distinctive click of Italian leather shoes on marble. Blake pulled Skylar behind a credenza as the office door swung open. James Taylor, head of security, entered with Blake's assistant. Neither should have been in the building at this hour. Marcus wants confirmation tonight, James said, voice low. The board votes tomorrow, and Blake still hasn't signed the Pentagon agreement. He's been distracted since yesterday, the assistant replied. Something about a woman in the lobby. Find out what he knows, James ordered. If he's connected with Skylar Chen, we accelerate the timeline. The Chinese buyers won't wait forever. Blake's hand tightened around Skylar's wrist. Foreign buyers. Military technology. A conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of his company. James paused, scanning the room. Someone's been here. Blake's phone vibrated silently, the security loop ending. Cameras would reactivate in 30 seconds. James moved toward the hidden safe, noticing the painting sitting slightly askew. Blake made a split-second decision, grabbing a glass paperweight from the credenza and hurling it through the window. Alarms blared instantly as glass shattered. "Emergency exit," Blake whispered, pulling Skylar toward a service door as James and the assistant raced to the broken window. They escaped into the night, evidence clutched in their hands, trust shattered beyond repair. Blake's company, his life's work, had become enemy territory. The safe house in Westchester County had been Blake's secret refuge, purchased through 7 layers of shell corporations, its existence known only to him. The colonial-style home sat on 5 wooded acres, equipped with cutting-edge security and off-grid capabilities. Ethan slept peacefully in the guest bedroom, exhausted from their hasty journey. Blake watched his son's chest rise and fall, still struggling to process that this child, this perfect combination of himself and Skylar, had existed without his knowledge for years. "He has your focus," Skylar said softly from the doorway. Even as a baby, he could concentrate on problems for hours. Blake turned to her, questions burning in his throat. "Why didn't you try to find me when you learned you were pregnant?" A noise from the hallway froze them both. Footsteps approached, the distinctive click of Italian leather shoes on marble. Blake pulled Skylar behind a credenza as the office door swung open. James Taylor, head of security, entered with Blake's assistant. Neither should have been in the building at this hour. "Marcus wants confirmation tonight," James said, voice low. "The board votes tomorrow, and Blake still hasn't signed the Pentagon agreement." "He's been distracted since yesterday," the assistant replied. "Something about a woman in the lobby." "Find out what he knows," James ordered. "If he's connected with Skylar Chen, we accelerate the timeline. The Chinese buyers won't wait forever." Blake's hand tightened around Skylar's wrist. "Foreign buyers. Military technology. A conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of his company." James paused, scanning the room. "Someone's been here." Blake's phone vibrated silently, the security loop ending. Cameras would reactivate in 30 seconds. James moved toward the hidden safe, noticing the painting sitting slightly askew. Blake made a split-second decision, grabbing a glass paperweight from the credenza and hurling it through the window. Alarms blared instantly as glass shattered. "Emergency exit," Blake whispered, pulling Skylar toward a service door as James and the assistant raced to the broken window. They escaped into the night, evidence clutched in their hands, trust shattered beyond repair. Blake's company, his life's work, had become enemy territory. The safe house in Westchester County had been Blake's secret refuge, purchased through 7 layers of shell corporations, its existence known only to him. The colonial-style home sat on 5 wooded acres, equipped with cutting-edge security and off-grid capabilities. Ethan slept peacefully in the guest bedroom, exhausted from their hasty journey. Blake watched his son's chest rise and fall, still struggling to process that this child, this perfect combination of himself and Skylar, had existed without his knowledge for years. "He has your focus," Skylar said softly from the doorway. Even as a baby, he could concentrate on problems for hours. Blake turned to her, questions burning in his throat. "Why didn't you try to find me when you learned you were pregnant?" Skylar's eyes darkened. "I did. 3 times. Each time, Marcus intercepted me. The 3rd time, he showed me evidence that you were involved in selling military secrets. Said if I contacted you again, we'd both face treason charges." The documents from Marcus's safe lay spread across the kitchen table, contracts, bank transfers, communications with foreign entities. A complex web of deception using Blake's company as a front. "This AI system," Blake muttered, examining the technical specifications. "It's revolutionary but catastrophically dangerous. It could trigger accidental warfare." "That's why I left," Skylar confirmed. I found early versions of this code embedded in our security protocols. When I confronted Marcus, he claimed it was your project. Blake's phone chimed with an encrypted message, a security alert from the property's perimeter. Someone had disabled the first layer sensors. "Pack up," Blake ordered, already moving to the security monitors. "They found us." "How?" Skylar gathered their evidence with practiced efficiency. "No one knew about this place." The answer came in a follow-up alert: a phone on the property was transmitting location data. Not Blake's device. Not Skylar's. Ethan's toy, Blake realized with horrifying clarity. The elephant. Skylar's face paled as she rushed to the bedroom, returning with the stuffed animal. Blake sliced it open with a pocket knife, revealing a sophisticated tracking device sewn into the stuffing. "Marcus gave him this," Skylar whispered. "Said it was a birthday present." Security cameras showed 3 black SUVs approaching through the woods, bypassing the main road entirely. Professional tactical team, moving with military precision. Blake activated the house's defense protocols, a 3-minute lockdown that would buy them escape time. He grabbed the go bag they'd prepared and lifted a still sleeping Ethan into his arms. "There's a tunnel in the wine cellar," he explained, leading Skylar downstairs. "It exits half a mile away at an old groundskeeper's cottage. There's a car there." As they descended, glass shattered upstairs, the first breach of their sanctuary. Ethan stirred against Blake's shoulder but didn't wake. "They're not trying to capture us," Skylar observed, her voice ice-cold. "Those are kill shots." The weight of their situation crystallized. This wasn't about corporate espionage anymore. This was survival. Rain pelted the windshield as their stolen sedan raced along mountain roads. Blake had switched vehicles twice since their narrow escape from the safe house, using cash and fake IDs from his emergency reserves. Ethan slept in the back seat, somehow peaceful despite the chaos surrounding him. "We need to talk about what happened 3 years ago," Blake said, eyes fixed on the winding road ahead. "All of it." Skylar stared at the darkness beyond their headlights. "I was working late, debugging the security protocol for the Pentagon presentation. That's when I found anomalous code fragments, hooks into systems that shouldn't have existed." "The AI backdoor," Blake nodded. "Yes, but it was sophisticated, designed to look like normal security features unless you knew exactly what to search for. I tracked the implementation dates and discovered they aligned perfectly with your overseas trips." Blake's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Marcus arranged all my international travel." "I didn't know that then," Skylar continued. "When I dug deeper, I found communications between an account using your credentials and buyers in restricted countries. The evidence pointed directly at you. So you ran." "I confronted Marcus first," Skylar corrected him. "Showed him what I'd found. He seemed shocked, said he'd suspected something but needed proof. Asked me to keep quiet while he investigated." Her voice hardened. 2 days later, I discovered I was pregnant. That same night, someone broke into my apartment. They took my laptop but nothing else. Marcus, Blake concluded. The next day, he called me into his office. Showed me additional evidence of your involvement, travel records, banking transactions, coded messages. Said I had a choice, disappear with his help, or face accessory charges for discovering classified intelligence operations. Blake pulled the car onto a Forest Service road, cutting the headlights. And you believed him. I had 24 hours to decide while carrying your child. Skylar's voice cracked. I chose protecting our baby over blind faith. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof like distant gunfire. What I don't understand, Blake said after a long silence, is why Marcus went to such extremes. Creating fake adoptions, threatening witness protection. Why not just, he couldn't finish the thought. Eliminate us? Skylar finished for him. The Prometheus code has a fatal flaw. It requires periodic authentication from its creator to remain stable. Marcus couldn't risk killing me until he extracted the authentication sequence. Blake's blood ran cold. You built failsafes into the system. I suspected something was wrong even before I found concrete evidence. So yes, I embedded emergency protocols that only I can access. Skylar turned to face him fully. That's our leverage, Blake. That's why we're still alive. In the back seat, Ethan stirred, blinking sleepily at his parents. Bad men coming? He asked in a small voice that broke Blake's heart. No, buddy, Blake assured him, meeting his son's eyes in the rearview mirror. We're safe here. The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. They wouldn't be safe anywhere until they exposed the truth, a truth that implicated the highest levels of Blake's company and possibly reached into government agencies. Skylar reached over, her fingers brushing Blake's arm. There's something else you should know. The military application wasn't Marcus's endgame. The AI system was designed to do something much worse. The mountain cabin belonged to Blake's grandfather, a property so disconnected from his public life that not even his legal team knew of its existence. No electricity, no internet, no cellular service. Just wilderness, isolation, and safety. While Skylar showed Ethan how to skip rocks across the small lake behind the cabin, Blake reviewed everything they'd learned. Marcus had orchestrated an elaborate scheme using Blake's company to develop prohibited military technology. He'd isolated Blake from Skylar, hidden the existence of his son, and positioned himself to take control of the company through bored allies. But why? The financial gain, while substantial, didn't justify the risk. Blake spread the documents across the rustic wooden table, arranging them chronologically. A pattern emerged, meetings with foreign officials coinciding with unexplained security breaches at military installations. Technology demonstrations followed by mysterious intelligence failures. This wasn't just about selling technology. This was about deploying it. A twig snapped outside the cabin door. Blake froze, reaching slowly for the hunting rifle propped beside the fireplace. Blake. Jessica's voice called out. Are you in there? Blake positioned himself behind the door, rifle ready. How did you find this place? Your grandfather's fishing photos, Jessica replied. I recognized the mountain formation from company retreat pictures. Blake hesitated. Jessica had been his most trusted security specialist for years, but trust had become a luxury he couldn't afford. I'm alone, she continued. And I can prove Marcus is trying to kill you. Blake cracked the door, keeping the rifle visible. Jessica stood on the porch, hands raised to show she carried no weapons. Her typically immaculate appearance was disheveled, mud on her boots, a tear in her jacket sleeve. They tried to recruit me, she explained, keeping her distance. James approached me yesterday, offered 7 figures to track your movements. Why should I believe you? Blake demanded. Jessica slowly reached into her pocket, withdrawing a small recording device. Because I recorded everything. The audio revealed James and Marcus discussing the elimination of liability, Blake, Skylar, and the child asset. They mentioned a board vote scheduled for tomorrow that would transfer controlling interest of the company while Blake was indisposed. They're staging a hostile takeover, Jessica concluded. Using your absence as justification for emergency leadership changes. Blake lowered the rifle slightly. If you're working with us, why did you text me a warning at my apartment that gave away our location? Jessica's expression shifted subtly, a micro-expression of calculation that wouldn't have been noticeable to most people. But Blake had developed a keen eye for deception since Skylar's disappearance. I was trying to help you escape before they arrived, Jessica claimed, her hand inching toward her jacket pocket. Blake. Skylar's voice called from inside the cabin. Ethan found something in there. The movement was lightning fast, Jessica drawing a concealed weapon as Blake slammed the cabin door shut. Bullets splintered wood as Blake dove for cover. They're here. Blake shouted to Skylar. Back exit, now. Outside, vehicle engines roared to life. Jessica had led them straight to the cabin. Blake grabbed the evidence and emergency pack, racing toward the back of the cabin where Skylar already had Ethan in her arms. They burst through the rear door as gunfire erupted behind them. The boat, Blake commanded, pointing toward a small fishing vessel moored at the lake's edge. It's our only chance. As they raced toward the water, Blake realized the depth of their predicament. Jessica, his most trusted ally, had been Marcus's plant all along. The company's resources, his personal security protocols, even his family history had been weaponized against him. Trust had become as dangerous as a loaded gun. The lake stretched black and silent before them as Blake steered the small boat toward the opposite shore. Stars reflected on the water's surface, creating the illusion they were floating through space, disconnected from Earth and its dangers. They'll expect us to head for the nearest town, Blake said, voice barely audible above the quiet motor. So we go deeper into the wilderness instead. Skylar huddled with Ethan beneath an emergency blanket, their son finally sleeping against her chest. How long can we keep running, Blake? They have resources, manpower, your company's intelligence capabilities. 20 more hours, Blake replied, checking his watch. That's when the board votes. If we can expose Marcus before then, we have a chance. The distant wail of sirens carried across the water, local authorities now involved in the manhunt. The story would be simple: deranged tech billionaire kidnaps woman and child, armed and dangerous. Another corporate golden boy fallen from grace. They reached the far shore as midnight passed, abandoning the boat and continuing on foot. The mountain forest provided cover but also challenges: rough terrain, wildlife, and near-total darkness. Blake led them along a barely visible hunting trail, Ethan now awake and walking between them, his small hand gripping Blake's fingers with surprising strength. Where are we going? Skylar whispered after an hour of silent hiking. There's an old ranger station 3 miles ahead, Blake explained. Abandoned years ago when the Park Service cut funding. It should have a radio we can use, one not connected to any network Marcus can monitor. Ethan stumbled over a root, and Blake lifted him without breaking stride, settling the boy on his shoulders. The weight felt right somehow, a burden that balanced rather than hindered him. He weighs exactly what you did at his age, a voice called from the darkness ahead. Blake froze, lowering Ethan and pushing him behind his back. A flashlight beam cut through the trees, illuminating a weathered face Blake hadn't seen in years. Grandpa? Blake breathed, disbelieving. Jackson Prescott stepped from the shadows, rifle balanced casually in the crook of his arm. At 78, he stood as straight as he had in the military photos from his youth. Motion sensors triggered when you took the boat, the old man explained. Not many people know about my lake property these days. We need to leave, Blake said urgently. Men with guns are following us. Jackson's weathered face crinkled with a smile that held no warmth. I counted 4 on thermal imaging. 2 by the cabin, 2 circling the lake. Amateur hour. They're making enough noise to wake a hibernating bear. He gestured for them to follow, leading them off the trail into denser forest. Your grandmother's people were Cherokee, he reminded Blake. She taught me how to move through these woods without leaving signs. A skill your father never appreciated. They reached a cleverly concealed hunting blind built into a hillside, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Inside, modern equipment contrasted with the rustic exterior. You've been expecting trouble, Skylar observed, noting the supplies, communications gear, and weapons. When your grandson becomes a billionaire before 30, you prepare for eventualities, Jackson replied, offering Ethan a granola bar which the boy accepted cautiously. Though I wasn't expecting a great-grandson to be part of the equation. Blake quickly explained their situation while Jackson listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Military AI with falsified attribution protocols, the old man finally said. Your Marcus friend isn't just a thief, he's trying to start a war. A war? Skylar questioned. Jackson powered up a secure terminal. An AI system that can penetrate foreign networks while appearing to originate from friendly sources? That's not a product, it's a false flag operation. Attack China while making it look like Russia. Hit Iran while pointing to Israel. Chaos by proxy, Blake realized. Global conflict that benefits weapons manufacturers, security contractors, and technology companies are positioned to offer solutions, Jackson finished. Your board meeting tomorrow isn't about a takeover. It's about timing the deployment of the Prometheus system. Dawn approached as they formulated a plan. They couldn't outrun Marcus's resources forever. They couldn't hide with a nationwide manhunt underway. They had to fight back, with evidence, with the truth, and with the one thing Marcus never expected Blake to have, a family who understood warfare better than any corporate raider ever could. Jackson's hunting blind contained military-grade communications equipment that belonged in a government facility, not a forest hideaway. When Blake raised an eyebrow, the old man shrugged. "Retirement bores me," was his only explanation. Dawn painted the eastern sky as Blake connected to a satellite uplink, bypassing conventional networks entirely. His fingers flew across the keyboard, executing a complex series of commands. "What are you doing?" Skylar asked, watching over his shoulder while Ethan slept on a cot in the corner. "Creating a ghost terminal inside our corporate servers," Blake explained. "A connection that exists between security protocols rather than through them." Jackson nodded appreciatively. Digital invisibility. Smart. The terminal gained access, revealing the company's inner workings. Blake navigated to the secure development servers where the most classified projects were stored. There, Skylar pointed to a folder labeled Prometheus/deployment. That wasn't there 3 years ago. The files inside revealed the horrifying truth. Prometheus wasn't just an AI system for sale to foreign entities, it was an active weapon, already embedded in critical infrastructure worldwide. The deployment schedule showed activation planned for 3 p.m. today. Exactly 1 hour after the board meeting would transfer control to Marcus. "He's planning coordinated cyber attacks on 7 countries," Blake whispered, scrolling through target lists. "Power grids, defense systems, financial networks, all compromised with attack signatures pointing to rival nations. Global chaos," Jackson concluded. "Markets crash, militaries mobilize, while your company positions itself as the only solution to a crisis it created." Skylar pulled up the authentication protocols. "The system requires 3 keys for activation, Marcus has 1, James has another, and the third. The third is coded to my biometric signature," Blake finished, realization dawning. "That's why they needed me alive until the board meeting. They need my fingerprint and retinal scan. Can you shut it down remotely?" Jackson asked. Blake shook his head. "Not without physical access to the master server. It's in a secure room beneath headquarters. Biometrically locked to executive access only." Skylar leaned forward, determination hardening her features. "I built a backdoor into the authentication system, a failsafe in case the technology was ever weaponized. But I can only activate it from inside the network." The implications were clear. They needed to return to the very heart of the danger, Blake's corporate headquarters, where every security system, every camera, and every employee would be hunting for them. "We have 12 hours, Blake said, checking his watch. "And we need a plan that accounts for every contingency." Outside, the forest awakened with morning sounds, birds calling, leaves. But in lines of code. "I'll handle tactical support," Jackson offered, opening a concealed weapons cache. "Been waiting years to show my grandson what his boring old grandpa actually did for the government." Blake looked at Skylar, at Ethan sleeping peacefully, at the mission impossible before them. His entire life had been built on technology's promise to improve humanity. Now that same technology threatens to tear the world apart. We go back, he decided. We end this. The corporate headquarters of Prescott Technologies dominated the Manhattan skyline, 90 stories of glass and steel reflecting the midday sun. News vans clustered at the main entrance, journalists reporting on the mysterious disappearance of tech billionaire Blake Prescott and the emergency board meeting called to address the leadership crisis. 2 blocks away, inside a nondescript delivery van, Blake watched the live coverage on a tablet. His grandfather worked methodically beside him, checking equipment with practiced precision. Security personnel at all entrances, Jackson noted, studying the building's defenses through specialized binoculars. Metal detectors, ID scanners, facial recognition cameras. They've doubled the standard protocol. They're expecting us, Blake confirmed. Skylar entered from the back of the van where she'd been preparing Ethan for his role. The boy wore a small backpack and a baseball cap pulled low, his expression serious beyond his years. He understands what to do, she said, though worry lines creased her forehead. But I don't like involving him. Neither do I, Blake admitted, kneeling before his son. But Marcus knows our faces. Ethan is our only advantage. The plan was dangerous but necessary. While Blake and Skylar created a distraction at the press entrance, Jackson would escort Ethan through the service entrance using forged credentials. The boy would carry a specialized device designed to disable the security systems on the executive floor, small enough to avoid detection, powerful enough to create their window of opportunity. What if something goes wrong? Skylar asked, the question they'd all avoided. Blake met her gaze directly. Then you take Ethan and run. Jackson has new identities prepared. Don't look back. The clock showed 2:15 p.m. 45 minutes until the board vote that would hand control to Marcus. 45 minutes before the deployment of a system designed to trigger global conflict. It's time, Jackson said, checking his watch. Blake pulled Ethan into a tight embrace. Remember what we practiced? The boy nodded solemnly. Find the blue door. Put the special phone on the black box. Count to 60. Then go back to Great-Grandpa. That's right, Blake said, throat tightening. You're the bravest person I know. Jackson took Ethan's hand, leading him toward the service entrance while Blake and Skylar moved toward the chaos of the press area. They wore maintenance uniforms, faces altered with subtle prosthetics designed to fool facial recognition systems. In another life, Blake said quietly as they approached the building, we might have built something amazing together. Skylar's hand found his, squeezing briefly. Let's make sure we get another life. The press entrance was chaotic, journalists shouting questions, security struggling to maintain order. Blake activated the first diversion, a series of false alarms throughout the building's lower floors. As guards rushed to respond, Blake and Skylar slipped through an employee entrance using badge credentials Jackson had manufactured. Inside, they moved with purpose toward the executive elevator banks. Blake's watch showed 2:27 p.m. If Ethan had succeeded, the security systems would be down for precisely 3 minutes. The elevator required no authentication, the first confirmation their plan was working. As the doors closed, Blake removed the maintenance disguise, revealing a perfect replica of his typical executive attire. Skylar did the same, transforming into a corporate attorney complete with credentials. Board room or server room, she asked as the elevator ascended. Server room first, Blake decided. Stop the deployment, then expose Marcus. The executive floor appeared deserted when they arrived, another positive sign. They moved swiftly toward the secure server room, bypassing the disabled security checkpoints. Blake placed his palm on the biometric scanner, holding his breath. The light flashed green. They were in. The server room hummed with the sound of cooling fans and processing power. Blake located the Prometheus main terminal while Skylar stood guard at the door. I need 10 minutes to disable the deployment protocols, he called to her, fingers already dancing across the keyboard. "We don't have 10 minutes, Skylar replied, voice tight. "Company security is heading this way." "And Blake, there with FBI agents." The boardroom fell silent as the doors burst open. 14 executives in impeccable suits turned as one, expressions shifting from annoyance to shock as Blake Prescott strode confidently into the room, Skylar Chin at his side. Marcus Wells recovered first, his practiced smile barely faltering. "Blake. We've been concerned about your whereabouts. The authorities have been searching." "Save it, Marcus," Blake interrupted, moving to the head of the table, his rightful position. "I think it's time we discussed Project Prometheus, don't you?" Murmurs rippled through the board members. Some looked confused, others alarmed. 3 faces remained carefully neutral: James, the CFO, and the legal counsel. Marcus's co-conspirators. "I'm not familiar with that project," Marcus replied smoothly. "Perhaps in your fragile state, you've become confused." Blake connected a drive to the room's presentation system. The wall screen illuminated with the Prometheus deployment schedule, targets, timestamps, attack signatures. 14 minutes until activation, Blake announced. 14 minutes until this company becomes responsible for the most devastating coordinated cyber attack in history. The confusion among board members turned to alarm. Marcus's face hardened. "This is absurd," the CFO interjected. "Mr. Prescott appears to be experiencing some kind of breakdown. Security should." "Should what?" Skylar stepped forward. "Hide the evidence like you hid Blake's son from him? Forge more documents? Or just eliminate problems like you tried to do at the safe house?" The boardroom doors opened again, admitting 2 FBI agents. Behind them stood Jackson, one hand resting protectively on Ethan's shoulder. "Perfect timing," Marcus said, relief evident in his voice. "Agents, this man is wanted for questioning in relation to illegal weapons development, corporate espionage, and conspiracy to commit acts of terrorism," the lead agent finished. "But we're not here for Mr. Prescott." The agent held up a warrant. "Marcus Wells, James Taylor, and Associates, you're under federal investigation for development of illegal cyber weapons and conspiracy against the United States." Marcus's composed facade cracked. "This is preposterous. Whatever Blake told you came with substantial evidence," the agent cut him off. "Evidence delivered to multiple intelligence agencies simultaneously 1 hour ago, along with the technical specifications needed to prevent deployment." Blake checked his watch. 9 minutes remaining. "Cutting it rather close, aren't we?" The FBI agent nodded to a tactical team waiting in the hallway. "The server room is secure. NSA specialists are disabling the system now." Marcus lunged for the conference room phone. James moved toward the door. The legal counsel reached inside his jacket. Everything happened at once. Jackson tackled James with surprising agility for his age. An FBI agent subdued the legal counsel, revealing a concealed weapon. Marcus found himself facing Blake across the boardroom table, phone in hand. "It's over, Marcus," Blake said quietly. "The activation codes have been changed. The deployment cancelled. Your buyers informed of your failure." "You have no idea what you've done," Marcus hissed, desperation replacing his corporate polish. "The people I answer to don't accept failure." "Neither do I," Blake replied. "That's something you never understood about me." As the FBI led the conspirators away, the remaining board members sat in stunned silence. The company they thought they knew had been operating as a front for international cyber warfare. Blake knelt before Ethan, who had remained remarkably calm throughout the confrontation. "You did perfectly," he told his son. "Better than perfectly." The boy smiled for the first time since their ordeal began. "Does this mean the bad men are gone?" Blake exchanged glances with Skylar, both knowing the answer wasn't as simple as their child deserved. The conspirators were captured, but the organization that funded them remained in the shadows. "The bad men are gone," Blake confirmed, choosing the truth that mattered in the moment. And we're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone. The aftermath unfolded like a complex chess endgame. FBI agents swarmed the executive floor, securing evidence and detaining Marcus's network of accomplices. Intelligence officers from 3 agencies coordinated with international partners to dismantle the Prometheus backdoors planted in critical systems worldwide. Blake, Skylar, and Ethan waited in Blake's private office while Jackson spoke with federal authorities in the conference room. Through the glass walls, Blake could see his grandfather commanding respect from officials half his age, revealing a side of the man Blake had never fully understood. "Your father would be proud," Skylar said, following his gaze. "Of both of you." Blake shook his head. "My father died never knowing what his own father actually did for a living. Just like I almost died without knowing my son." He turned to her. "We need to break that pattern." Ethan sat at Blake's desk, solemnly drawing on company letterhead, buildings and stick figures holding hands. A family in front of what appeared to be Blake's corporate tower. The office door opened as a senior FBI official entered, expression grave. "We have a situation, Mr. Prescott. Marcus Wells has escaped custody." Blake stood immediately. "How?" "Transport vehicle was ambushed 3 blocks from here. Professional hit, 4 agents down. Traffic cameras lost him entering the subway system." Skylar gathered Ethan into her arms, protective instincts flaring. "He'll come here. He needs the activation protocols." "The building is secure," the agent assured them. "We have teams at every." Emergency lights flashed as the building's security system initiated lockdown protocols. Blast doors sealed the executive floor as alarms blared. "What's happening?" the agent demanded, reaching for his weapon. Blake rushed to his computer terminal. "Someone's overridden the building's safety systems. We're sealed in." The security monitors showed chaos, FBI agents trapped on various floors, emergency responders unable to enter, communication systems failing. A master override that shouldn't have been possible. "There's a manual release in the main server room," Blake said, already moving toward the door. "I can restart the systems from there." "I'm coming with you," Skylar insisted. Blake shook his head. "Stay with Ethan. Jackson will protect you both." The FBI agent accompanied Blake through the executive floor toward the server room. The building felt eerily quiet under the pulsing emergency lights, evacuated except for trapped personnel. Marcus had help, Blake realized aloud. Someone with access to core building functions. They reached the server room door, ajar when it should have been secured. Blake approached cautiously, signaling the agent to cover him. Inside, Marcus stood at the main terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. A bloody gash crossed his forehead, his expensive suit torn and stained. "Step away from the console," the FBI agent ordered, weapon raised. Marcus didn't look up. 30 seconds too late, I'm afraid. Prometheus activation protocols are already processing. Blake checked the monitoring screens, they showed deployment sequences initiating across multiple targets. "You're starting a war," Blake said, disbelief coloring his voice. "For what? Money?" Marcus finally turned, a strange calm in his expression. "Money is for small minds, Blake. Power. That's the only currency that matters. The world that emerges from this chaos will need new leadership. You won't be around to see it," the agent stated flatly. A slight smile touched Marcus's lips. "Perhaps not. But neither will you." The terminal behind him flashed a warning, facility self-destruct sequence initiated. 3 minutes to detonation. "Insurance policy," Marcus explained casually. "The building's structural supports are wired with military-grade explosives. Either I walk out of here, or no one does." The FBI agent kept his weapon trained on Marcus. "Disarm it. Now." "I can't," Marcus replied. Only the system administrator can abort the sequence. He looked pointedly at Blake. Your choice, old friend. Stop Prometheus deployment, or save everyone in this building. You don't have time for both. The Manhattan skyline looked different from Central Park, the distinctive silhouette of Prescott Technologies now absent after the controlled demolition 3 months ago. Blake sat on a bench watching Ethan chase squirrels across the grass, Skylar beside him with her head resting on his shoulder. The contractors say the new headquarters will be completed ahead of schedule, Blake mentioned, scrolling through updates on his phone. Smaller, more efficient design. Less imposing. Like its owner, Skylar observed with a smile, squeezing his hand. The choice in the server room had been impossible yet inevitable. Blake had aborted the building's self-destruct sequence while the FBI cyber team remotely disabled Prometheus from their command center. Marcus had escaped in the confusion, vanishing into the wind with access to neither the company nor the weapon he'd created. The aftermath transformed everything. Blake had restructured the company from the ground up, instituting transparency protocols and ethical guidelines that set new industry standards. The board was entirely new, vetted personally by intelligence agencies. And Blake's role had changed from CEO to chairman, allowing him time for what mattered most. Daddy! Look what I found. Ethan called, racing toward them with a colorful leaf clutched in his small hand. Blake accepted the offering with appropriate reverence. That's incredible, buddy. Should we take it home for your collection? Home was a brownstone in Brooklyn now, not a penthouse or secluded mansion. A normal home on a normal street where Ethan could have a normal childhood, protected by security systems that remained invisible to their neighbors. Jackson visited weekly for dinner, gradually sharing stories of his classified past with his grandson and great-grandson. The old man had found a new purpose as a security consultant for the rebuilt company, his experience proving invaluable. Any word? Skylar asked quietly after Ethan returned to his explorations. Blake knew what she meant. Intelligence reports place him in Southeast Asia last month. The trail went cold in Singapore. Marcus remained a ghost, a threat that haunted the edges of their new life. International authorities continued the manhunt, but both Blake and Skylar harbored private doubts about whether he would ever face justice. He'll surface eventually, Skylar said with quiet certainty. People like Marcus crave recognition. They need to be seen. And when he does, we'll be ready, Blake replied, his arm tightening around her shoulders. The company had instituted fail-safes throughout its systems, layers of protection against the threat they knew might return. But their most important security measure wasn't technological. It was truth. Ethan would grow up knowing his history, understanding the responsibilities that came with the Prescott name and fortune. Blake's phone buzzed with a news alert, another technology company exposed for ethical violations. The business world he'd once dominated now looked to him as a reformer, a voice for responsible innovation. Your interview with the Times posted this morning, Skylar noted. They're calling you the conscience of Silicon Valley. Blake laughed. If they only knew how close I came to losing everything that matters. Ethan raced back to them, eyes bright with excitement. Can we get ice cream? Please. Such a normal request. Such a precious ordinary moment that Blake had nearly missed experiencing. Absolutely, he agreed, standing and lifting his son onto his shoulders. Ice cream is exactly what this day needs. As they walked through the park, a man, a woman, and their child, they appeared to be simply another family enjoying the afternoon. Passers-by wouldn't notice the subtle security detail keeping watch from a distance, or recognize the tech billionaire in casual clothes carrying a laughing boy. They wouldn't see the lingering vigilance in the parents' eyes, the awareness that somewhere in the world, a dangerous man remembered them too. A man with patience, resources, and a thwarted vision of global chaos. But that was tomorrow's problem. Today was for ice cream, for laughter, for building the family they'd almost lost before it began. The future remained unwritten, a blank page waiting for their story to continue.